Hi, everyone. Welcome to GreenSky's podcast, episode 9. This is kind of the first episode where we are diving deeper into GreenSky's portfolio companies. Over the past 8 episodes, we had conversations around GreenSky, what we invest in, kind of our thesis. Then we recorded a short mini series on term sheets and discussing what are some of the things that entrepreneurs should know when they're talking about term sheets with their investors. And then we had 2 episodes where we dove deeper into deep tech investments. So I guess this episode kind of brings in everything together. We have one of our very experienced entrepreneurs with us today as our guest, Tim Angus, who's the CEO of Brickeye. So Tim, it's great to have you here with us. I would love to, if you can walk our listeners and viewers toward what is your background, what is Brickeye, and all the spiel about what you guys do.
Sure. Well, great to be here, Moien, and I'm honored to be one of your first entrepreneur guests. So, and congrats on launching this series. I think it's fantastic. So, my name is Tim Angus. You know me well, and your team knows me well because I've worked close with you guys for a number of years now. But by way of background, I began my career at a very large Fortune 100 company called Johnson Controls, focused on the energy management space largely, large-scale projects sort of globally that had a big impact on energy, and it sort of drove a lot of my interest around the clean tech environment and energy efficiency, and eventually led me down the technology path. But I jumped into my first startup after about 10 years at Johnson Controls, which was, a dramatic change going from a company with, 140,000 employees to taking on a small startup mission. But I would say it began a phase of my career, which is still going, that call it a kind of a sickness or a love, I'm not sure, but I'm sort of addicted to the startup and scaling life now, having transitioned from big corporate. So Brickeye is actually my fourth startup. Interestingly, though, myself compared to a lot of entrepreneurs, I've never been a founder in a startup. I've always been parachuted in, brought in to fix the business plan, get the capital behind the company, build the sales strategy, build the sales team, and then execute on the growth. So my first startup was heavily focused on clean technology, particularly thermal efficiency and capturing waste heat and improving the efficiency of thermal systems to save millions of dollars and millions of tons of CO2. My second startup actually brought me a lot more into the software and hardware world. But again, focused on energy efficiency, but leveraging software algorithms and unique hardware, wireless hardware to control large electrical loads. The third startup was focused more on the wireless space, but again, a lot of products related to energy efficiency and energy systems. Our largest customer was actually Tesla. We built the hardware and software that really became the brain for the Tesla solar systems that they install in residential solar. And then Brickeye, I got involved with the company back in around 2018, just more so as a consultant, helping the guys out, doing those things that I talked about, helping to make sure that the strategy was right, the business plan was right, and ultimately came in to help put together the first significant structured financing round. GreenSky was already in as a seed investor, but after I got involved and worked really hard with the team, we were able to actually pull in a Series A investment, which GreenSky led, but we were able to bring in some new excellent investors into the company. And in 2021, when the timing was right and I had the capacity, I actually decided to take the CEO role. The team, both the founders and the investors, had been asking me if I would step into the role. And the timing was right, and I was super excited about the company's potential, and we did it. And interestingly, we timed it the same day as completing a small acquisition. of a company called Brickeye. So as you know, we were previously called AOMS Technologies, and I always joke and say that's the kind of name you end up with when you have a couple of PhDs name a company. So Brickeye was a lot
Yes,
more
it was
topical.
Advanced Optomechanical
Yes,
Systems.
yes, that's right. It's a mouthful. But we adopted the Brickeye name and we did a small acquisition of a company called Brickeye, which has actually, radically transformed our business and the direction we're heading and really the products and services that we provide to the market. Um, so a little bit more about Brickeye, maybe take it back to sort of the genesis of the company. Again, I wasn't one of the original founders, but the company was founded by three really brilliant young technology-focused graduates. So, and I say that like a lot of great Canadian tech stories, this company was born in the lab at the University of Waterloo. And for anybody in the U.S. audience, it's sort of well known in Canada that Waterloo is sort of Canada's equivalent to an MIT when it comes to engineering and science perspective. So Hamid, Amir, and Richard, our three founders, were working in the lab. Two of them doing their PhDs and one doing their masters, and they were collaborating on a project and actually developed a very unique type of sensor, an IoT platform. So sensor and then the software that would interrogate the data that the sensors would pull, and the sensor was actually fiber optic. So the fiber optic strand was the sensor, and the team had figured out how to use fiber optic as a sensor to determine things like temperature, humidity, stress, strain, displacement. So it was a very unique innovation, and they were able to secure their first order. And in really where the technology found its home, the market that it found a good place in was for the environmental remediation sector. So when you think about polluted soil, typically U.S. sites that are what we call superfunded EPA sites, they need to remediate the soil with thermal treatment, so pumping a lot of heat into the ground, and you need a very ruggedized sensor type to be able to withstand that harsh corrosive environment. And AOMS's technology was very, very well suited to that. And the team was able to scale into that market very effectively. The challenge with it was it just wasn't that big a market. So when I got involved with the company, I thought, this is a brilliant team, incredible innovation. Their ability to develop hardware at the same time as software was fantastic. And the three founders had the one quality that I look for first and foremost when I think about getting involved with a company, is that they had very, very little ego around the business and themselves, which meant that they would be open to taking ideas from someone coming in to help them run the company, and from investors like GreenSky coming in and really providing great feedback on how they should take the business, different approaches they should use. So I got involved at that stage, but really what we recognized quickly was that while we had done a great job owning that market for the environmental remediation space, it was only ever going to be so big. So we thought, okay, we need to pivot this technology into some adjacent markets. And the one that we identified has become very important because it has become what the company's now all about, which is the construction industry. So we adapted the sensor technology, and the first use case was actually to embed the fiber optic sensing into concrete before it's poured. So strapping it to the rebar and then being able to actually measure in real time the temperature of the concrete as it's curing. And then in the software, we really went to work developing the intelligence in the software that could actually provide valuable analytics, predictive analytics on both the quality and the timing, the maturity of the concrete. And it worked incredibly well. But what we realized led us to another pivot, which was that the fiber optic sensing was overkill. While it worked incredibly well, it was probably more accurate than it needed to be and more expensive than it should be. So we took all that great work we did on the software side and building the Lumicon concrete software platform, and we re-engineered the hardware So we created a new form of sensor that's more digital instead of fiber optic based, which we're still using today, and is an incredibly ruggedized sensor. And that's sort of the ethos of our company has always been, we need to build incredibly rugged gear that's well suited for the harsh environment on a hardware level. So we built our network gear and our new sensors, and we've continued to evolve the software platform in Lumicon to add more and more value and provide more and deeper analytics about the health of the concrete, the maturity, making sure that big infrastructure builders are meeting their specification requirements, spotting anomalies, before they happen or as they're happening, so they can avoid keeping going with, say, a bad batch of concrete. So it really helps those big infrastructure builders to avoid very expensive rip out and rework. And a lot of times it helps them with their efficiency and their productivity by giving them good indication of how that concrete is curing, how quickly it's maturing, so that they can be on schedule or ahead of schedule. So we got really good market traction with the technology, with the Lumicon platform in the big infrastructure construction market. And we very quickly were realizing, okay, this is working. We're capturing a lot of customers. How can we land and expand? And at the same time, we were recognizing that most of our work was coming from the big infrastructure world. If you took the top 10 largest infrastructure builders in the U.S., 7 of them were using our platform. But what we were not doing a great job of capturing was the multi-residential space, purpose-built apartments and luxury condo towers, those sorts of construction projects. So we thought, what other products can we bring to market that we could land and expand with existing customers, but also capture that other big part of the construction market, which was vertical construction. And we started thinking a lot about building out a line of sensing and software related to risk, safety, and quality. And that was really the where Brickeye was kind of born as a company through acquisition, but we were working on developing a lot of other sensor types for construction products, like noise sensing, weather sensing, changes in weather that can affect construction, dust monitoring, and particularly and importantly, we were developing a line of water leak detection and flow sensing products, because water risk is one of the biggest insurable risks in construction. And interestingly, that has become a massive driver of our business, and our growth is actually our water risk mitigation platform. And so we were building this all ourselves when a small company from Toronto arrived on the doorstep and said, I understand you guys are starting to build this stuff. We've already done a lot of this work, and we're looking for a home for the company. And we negotiated to acquire Brickeye. So we did a bit of a buy versus build analysis, and decided that the platform as it existed by Brickeye was suitable for what we needed, and we could just go to work on improving it and adding more features and benefits to it. So that was in 2021, and that was really the launch of our second platform in the market, which we call Construction Risk. So today we exist as a company with 2 platforms in market, one of them being Lumicon, serving the big infrastructure construction market focused on concrete, and the other one being Construction Risk, which has largely become focused on water leak detection and mitigation during the course of construction. So that's also sort of what we are really well recognized in the market for, is we are a course of construction solution provider. We're not yet in the built environment with our services. That's kind of future roadmap for us, but what we're well respected for is that we understand the live construction period when buildings are actually going up, and we understand how to get in at the very early planning stage and work with developers and general contractors to de-risk their projects, particularly around water risk mitigation, and about how they leverage data from the concrete to make sure that they're meeting their specification and productivity goals.
Awesome. That was a great intro. I kind of what resonated with me the most is something that I see when I deal with a lot of the deep tech entrepreneurs, the fact that they're in love with their technology to an extent that they're not they have that ego that you mentioned that the Brickeye team or the AOMS founding team didn't have. A lot of the kind of deep tech entrepreneurs come from scientific background. I come from a scientific background, and when you deal with scientists, a lot of them are just in love with the technology, which sometimes it becomes the killer of the business, unfortunately, because they don't fall in love with the problem and they don't try to solve the problem that their customers have. They're trying to essentially force fit their solution into existing problems, and I think that is definitely one major reason why Brickeye is succeeding in like having great pivots toward really solving challenges that are out there, and they're not biased about their specific technology that they developed, let's say 10 years ago. They're looking to improve that technology all the time, pivot, acquire, and be open to like bringing in what solves the customer's problem. And so everything is customer centric, nothing is technology centric. The idea is just to solve the problem that the customer has, add value, and not to care a lot about what technology we use. We use the best technology that is out there, whether we acquire it, whether we develop it, whether it has been developed before. We don't care. We want to solve the problem that the customer has.
Mm-hmm.
That is that was a great story, great overview. One of the things that entrepreneurs obviously deal with day to day is just challenges and problems. It's not a smooth road. There's never a dull moment. There's always something new coming up. I was just wondering if you can share with us maybe one of the challenges you've dealt with over the past few years working with Brickeye, whether it has been fundraising, whether it has been customer acquisition, dealing with customers, technology. What has been one of the major kind of problems or challenges that you've been dealing with?
Well, I mean, first of all, the road of an entrepreneur and startup founders is incredibly difficult, and there's going to be so many different challenges. So, I mean, it's hard to pick which one, but the life of a startup is basically solving challenges, recognizing when you need to pivot, pivoting effectively, and going fast and efficiently. I would say for Brickeye, the toughest challenges have been fundraising, but largely due to some of the most extreme timing challenges that the startup world has ever faced. And I would say that financing in general has been very challenging for Brickeye. We've done an effective job, and it's a combination of brute force and I guess maybe some experience in having lived through the cycles. And myself, I guess having a lot more white hair than a lot of startup CEOs. I've lived through a lot of different cycles, a lot of crashes and a lot of market corrections. But I would say in my time being involved with Brickeye, I think the last sort of 5 to 7 years have been probably the most challenging ever for startups when it comes to financing. And as an example, Brickeye, we pulled together the Series A in 2018, towards the very end, actually the last week of the year. And, in 2019, we're into a pandemic. And so, that was, I think will go down in history as the most challenging time ever for startups and the extreme things that had to be done to survive the pandemic. So, at Brickeye, we took the capital that we really had about an 18-month runway planned with that capital. And, obviously would have a follow-up Series A2 or a B, but we actually stretched that capital close to 3 years because we had to. We had to do everything possible through the pandemic, take advantage of every program. So that was a very challenging time. It wasn't challenging to raise the Series A, but it was challenging to be able to stretch the Series A double how far we thought we'd need to. And I guess, interestingly, from a timing perspective, the last couple of years have been very challenging in the venture markets for fundraising. And it was about a little bit more than 2 years ago, we knew we needed to go to market for more capital. And I recognized kind of where we were, where the venture funding cycle was, and thought nobody is raising a fixed price round right now. No, not nobody, but very few companies are. And that very quickly made the decision that we better pivot to debt. So we did a debt round. And I guess that just sort of comes with experience of recognizing the only price rounds getting done were typically what I call cram downs that were very, very dilutive and very hurtful to founders and employees. So we pivoted to a debt round and got a debt round done instead. But it's definitely been a very challenging 5 years to be seeking funding for as a startup.
Yeah, that's fair. Definitely one of the most challenging times. And I think you guys really handled it well. It's this is my opinion and everybody else's opinion at GreenSky is that we're pretty proud of what Brickeye has done and achieved over the years, both in terms of bringing on new customers and expanding their revenue, as well as just like bringing in the financing that is required to grow the company. And so maybe that's a good segue to talk about investors, because people are looking for investment. Investment is seen as, let's say, the dollar amount that comes to your bank account and gives you the runway to run. But there are other things that investors can be useful for. They can give you strategic advice. They can also be very detrimental to your business. So it could be a very positive interaction or a very negative interaction. And you've seen it a bunch of times in different organizations. You've worked with a bunch of investors. I'm just curious to know, what do you think about, let's say, the value of a good investor, and then what has been your kind of experience dealing with the GreenSky folks?
I, the value of having a good investment partner, I mean, I can't overstate how important it is, because through the years, I've experienced some really bad investors and some really great ones. And um, it typically comes down to a couple of things for me. You know, what are the what are the qualities that make an investment partner good? It's typically the fund strategy. It has to match what your business is doing, so that you don't find yourself feeling like you need to change the nature of your business to match what your funding partner wants. For us, as an example, we are always going to have a hardware component to our business, and we're living in a time where the venture market's been a bit sick with this concept that everything has to be software, and those end up, in my opinion, becoming incredibly high risk investments when the market turns. Whereas, Brickeye, we need hardware to enable the insights that our software can capture. So I think finding an investor that's aligned with your strategy and is going to be in for the ride and understand that this is the way our business is going to scale. So I think that's one thing. And then I think it comes down to the individuals on the team. I typically have enjoyed working with smaller teams, investment funds venture funds that have smaller team. I think because your investment is going to be a lot more meaningful to them. You're not just, one investment out of hundreds, and you're not going to get any mind share. And honestly, what that can lead to is when the times get tough and you really need to lean in on your investment partners and say, we need help. You're going to be more meaningful to a smaller fund, a smaller team, than a big fund that's got 100 plus investments. It's very easy for them to just say, okay, this is a bad one, and let's write it off. So I find that the smaller the team is, the more mind share you're going to get from them. The easier it is to interact, and you're going to get great partners from the team on your board that are willing to roll up their sleeves, give you great advice, make incredible intros for you, and be there when you need them. And I will say that GreenSky was the first investor in this company even before I got involved, and it's been incredible to watch GreenSky evolve. I think you're looking at Fund 6 now, and GreenSky has been just so incredibly supportive for us and been there on every round, stepped up and led multiple times. And so those are the sorts of commitments I look for in an investor. And we work very closely with Mike, obviously, with Mike List. And he's proven to me to be a guy who's always in your corner. And he's going to be there when you need him. So that's really what I look for. And yeah, I think that the massive funds, I think you've got some risk typically in working with them that you're not going to be meaningful to them.
Yeah, especially I would say at the earlier stages, at the pre-seed, seed, Series A, when there are like fewer companies in the portfolio, you're more, as a fund manager, you're more focused on the companies. If you're, as you say, if you have like 200 companies in your portfolio, you don't really have the time to be able to allocate enough resources to them, to spend time with them, to hear their challenges and be able to support. So that's definitely one of the challenges when funds are less focused on their portfolio companies. So, Tim, what do you think the future holds for Brickeye? What is the vision for the future of Brickeye? Where are we going from what has been achieved over the past couple of years? What is the future hold?
I mean, we are incredibly optimistic about the future for the company. We are at our most exciting point in terms of pipeline and secured backlog. I think the combination of the two platforms we have in market, they complement each other just so well in terms of balancing, big projects versus, smaller, consistent revenue that comes from Lumicon versus construction risk. But in terms of brand recognition and traction, it's really, really happening for us right now. And I'm looking at, exciting geographical growth for the company. As you know, we're getting really good penetration with the Lumicon product. We've got the U.S. market covered very nicely. And like I said, I think we've got 7 or 8 of the top 10 infrastructure builders on our platform for Lumicon, and we've got over 300 customers overall on that platform, with I think a 92% reorder rate from them. So our metrics are really good. The ARR component of that line of business is growing nicely for us. And then the other geographical market for Lumicon that we're really excited about is the Middle East, particularly Saudi Arabia. We have a tremendous amount of opportunity there and existing business. So we've got some really big accounts in Saudi Arabia, and we see that as a great area of the world for growth for us going forward. And then with the construction risk platform, the world of construction has been very interesting the last year, particularly because here we sit in the busiest construction city in the world, Toronto, on the Crane Index. It's exponentially bigger than any other city in the world, but it's really pulling back. It's cooling off substantially due to a number of micro and macroeconomic factors, in particular the interest rates. But at the same time, a year and a half ago, we really started pivoting. Again, talking about pivots, we sort of saw this coming in Toronto, and we were looking at which markets are set to grow for vertical construction. And South Florida was really one that we knew. And I would say that my team's done an incredible job penetrating that Florida marketplace, and we are the number one brand in the market there for construction risk. And our pipeline and backlog is growing significantly there. So I think we're kind of just getting started. And I think looking at the scalability of our business over the next 3 to 5 years is mind-boggling, with just both of those platforms fully ticking now and really finding their place in their customer segment. So I think it's revenue growth, and particular emphasis on now being able to grow the recurring portion of our revenue so nicely, because our hardware has become so popular out there that's going to naturally drive a lot of subscription and recurring revenue on the platform. So growth, I'm super excited about where we're headed. I think we're creating a tremendous amount of value in the company for everybody, employees, for customers, and for our investors.
Awesome. So we talked about the history of Brickeye. We talked about the interaction with the investors. We talked about the future. Do you have any final thoughts? Maybe any advice for entrepreneurs? What do we want to tell to other entrepreneurs that are going to actually go through the same path of entrepreneurship? You've been on the corporate side, you've moved to the entrepreneurship side. You've had this was not your first rodeo, so you've been doing this for many years. What is your final words, final advice, maybe?
My advice is sort of a warning that you're not picking an easy road, but it's a very, very rewarding road. I had this conversation recently with a very close friend of mine who's been incredibly successful in sort of simple business models, just a lot of hard work, but growing service oriented businesses, and that either being in a big corporate or being in a more simple business model is a much easier road in terms of it's a lot of hard work, but you're not up against that technology risk, right? So if you're going to start up journey in tech, just understand that most businesses, non-tech businesses, have operational risk. So as a startup entrepreneur in tech, you're going to have tech risk along with operational risk. So it's a tough road. But I would say that, speaking from experience, in terms of if you're just doing something for the money, I made a lot more money in big corporate consistently. It was dependable, but there's something about being a tech entrepreneur and seeing that you can create great product, you can open new markets, new applications. It's very fulfilling. So there's a lot of pride in executing on a startup. And I think what young entrepreneurs need to understand is that it also comes with a lot of failure. And I think, you have to make sure that you've adjusted your expectations and your personality to understand that you might fail. There's a really good chance you'll fail, but you need to take that failure as a badge of honor. It's a well-used term in startup world, that failure is a badge of honor. But you can really only leverage that if you can take the lessons you've learned in those failures and apply them, so that you don't do them again. So it's a constant journey. You're always learning, and again, I think the most successful tech stories end up being the companies that can pivot as they need to. So you need to pivot for a lot of reasons. Your business model is not working, pivot. The market's changing, be ready to pivot. We've had to pivot geographically, as an example. We put a big emphasis on South Florida. So it's about being nimble and willing and able to pivot, and also willing to accept failure, learn from it, and then do it again, but do it right.
Great, awesome. Thank you, Tim, for coming to our podcast. This was a great episode. I learned a ton from your experience, and I'm sure our viewers and listeners learned as much. And folks, there you have it. This was episode 9 with Tim Angus, CEO of Brickeye.
Thank you.